Good morning. Welcome to the National Sporting Library Museum's Coffee with the Curator program. We are live and Facebook streaming this morning. My name is Claudia Pfeiffer. I am the Deputy Director and George L. Orstrom Jr. Curator here at the NSLM. And I'm really excited to be sharing an exhibition that we just opened yesterday. It's called Identity and Restraint, Art of the Dog Collar. For those of you who haven't joined this program before, we really look for this to be a conversation. So if you have thoughts or questions or wanted to point something out that we hadn't covered, please feel free to share your thoughts along the way. So how many of you have been on the Coffee with the Curator before? Yes, excellent. So we got a lot of newbies today. Wonderful. So welcome. So when you saw our publicity about an exhibition on dog collars, how many of you thought that that was weird? Raise your hand. So I think what we'll see as we move through this exhibition, that it's a really fascinating exploration of our relationship with canines. We had this amazing opportunity to partner with the American Kennel Club Museum of the Dog in New York City. If you haven't been to that museum before, it's right across the street from Grand Central Station. They've been open there for about 4 years now. And when we started to collaborate on this exhibition, Alan Fossel was the executive director. He's now the curator. And we partnered for the loans from the American Kennel Club collection and from the AKC Museum of the Dog. So you'll be seeing about 11 paintings from the American Kennel Club and 38 from the Museum of the Dog, paired with our dog collar collection. And so this amazing collection came to us as the generosity of Timothy and Jocelyn Greenan, who were inveterate collectors of collars for decades. And we were so lucky to receive 187 of them in 2014. And they range over centuries. We have about 70 of them on view that we'll be seeing today. And so one of the criteria for the artwork was that it had to depict a collar in some way. So every single artwork and painting and sculpture has a collar in it. And so looking at the title of the show, Identity and Restraint, right? Why identity and restraint? It really goes to the concept of the breeding standards of dogs. What type of dog is it? What type of hound is it? Is it a dog that was bred for war? Is it a dog that was bred for sport? Is it a dog that becomes a faithful companion? All of those things relate to identity, right? And restraint really comes down to the idea of this is a furnishing that was purposely made to be able to have a communication with our dogs, right? And so looking at that as a theme that runs through the entire exhibition. And so Art of the Dog Collar, pretty self-explanatory. We've got the artwork, and also these are some really amazing objects in terms of these historic collars. So we really wanted to drive that home with the first painting and collars that you see here as our introduction. So this is Zilla. This was painted by 1837. It's by an artist, British artist by the name of Charles Hamilton. So it's called Zilla because that was the name of the Saluki that was painted here in the composition. And this is another thing that you'll see. It doesn't necessarily look like a modern Saluki. You can see the breed type starting to be apparent here. But this is 1837. And so we see breed standards moving into different directions over the course of the century into the 20th century. And so we have here this Saluki. It was called a Persian Greyhound at the time. It was a really exotic import breed in terms of looking at the types of dogs that were available in Britain. So it's believed there were only 3 known Salukis in Britain at the time, 2 males and a female, which is here is Zilla, and that was her name. And so we have this beautiful landscape and this sportsman here who's about to let his Saluki go to go chase probably whatever quarry is there at the time. And so looking at the collars that match, we have this Dutch collar. This is from 1793. You'll notice that it is you can see the 1793 here. And then this beautiful brass collar with the lion motif on the front, and again with the cut work there. So any thoughts, questions? All right. So I mentioned that Timothy and Jocelyn Greenan were so generous in donating their dog collars. They also were underwriters for the exhibition along with Garth Greenan Gallery and Mark Anstine and Marianna Lancaster. So we owe them a huge debt of gratitude for underwriting the exhibition here at the National Sporting Library Museum. Tim also wrote an essay for the catalog and created the groundwork for the material relating to the collars. And so we start here a little bit before the artwork that we're going to be looking at, and really establishing the relationship that we have with dogs as human beings, and how that relationship was depicted in early art. So here we have a panel that looks to, we have this Greek joust there, which shows a Malatin dog, a type of Maltese dog. And then we have from Pompeii a cast of one of the dogs that were in Pompeii when it erupted. And so if you're familiar with these castings, if not familiar with these castings, the negative space that was left, concrete was poured, and then you have these casts. In this particular instance, the collar actually is evident, and the brass fittings are in the casting there. Of course, the Bayeux Tapestry, famously, 1070, the Battle of Hastings, and there are about 30 different breeds of dogs that are shown in the tapestry, and a lot of them have collars. And then we look to, again, another example in Pompeii. There are several frescoes and mosaics that depict dogs in one form or another. We had a reproduction made of the famous one that's depicted there, and it has the letters Cave Canem on them. And what does it mean? Beware of dog, the universal truth, right? So it was a lot of fun. Really great reproduction there as well. So that sets the tone for our relationship. So we have dogs of war. We then look to the idea of the hunt as the first imagery and artwork that we'll be exploring today. The earliest painting in the exhibition is from 1605. We have this just amazing wall. We've been jokingly calling this the Wall of Horrors. So we have these epic Dutch paintings where we have these grand hunts that are being presented here. The lion hunt, this one is circa 1650, attributed to Paul de Vos. And you'll see the wounded dogs here below, and then the mastiff type there with the collar with the spikes facing out. And the thing to remember with these is that the spikes are to protect the dog, right? The more aggressive the quarry, the more metal they're probably going to have around their neck. And looking at an example of that, here's a surviving collar from the 16th century, and two of the pieces are missing. This would have this loops back around and connects to the metal circles on the top here. We have another version of that over here. You know, this mastiff here has gotten a really quite a big chunk of a horse's leg here. Even the hoof is there, a little bit gruesome, but you know, he's protecting his meal, and he's got a really impressively painted collar there with the fabric and then the chain that is connected to the wall. These collars would have usually been lined with leather, with fabric, or with felt to protect the dog's neck. And looking at early ones that relate to this in the case here, so they would have been made of iron, of leather, of nails. So we have variations here. The 17th century German collar is iron. The one to the left is 18th century British, metal collar with spikes. And then the ones on the right would have been made by the hunter, so leather collar, and then poking the nails through on that side. There's a late 18th century French and a 19th century one there. One of the highlights of the exhibition is this amazing painting called Amsterdam Dog Market. It's from 1671-72. It's by Abraham Hondius. And this isn't an actual representation of a dog market as much as it's a theatrical set top looking for a narrative and conversation about dogs and purchasing dogs and the types of dogs that were available at the time. So we have in the foreground the full variety of breeds. And you can see, again, we talk about the standards of what the dogs look like. They don't necessarily look like modern types today. Some of them, others do. And we have this lady with her servant there picking a lap dog for her, the one that she's holding. And then we have this gentleman who has a female here and looking for a male. You can see her looking out at you from the center of the composition. And this classical architecture in the background. And then great details here, these really accurately painted collars. And you can see that they really do relate to the examples that we have here to see in person as well. Any thoughts? All right, feel free to jump in though. Okay, so this particular, she's catching up. So this particular collar is one of my favorites. I mean, you can't even begin to comprehend sometimes the idea that this would be a collar. It's for Tibetan Mastiff, those really gentle giant dogs. They're, you know, just you imagine that magnificent sort of standing there with this amazing collar around its neck. So this is an Indian example, probably Goa. It's from the 18th century. And it's has these elaborate agate cabochons in these 3 rows around half of the collar there. And then the front of it is actually a clasp. There's a hook on it that actually hooks into the fittings that are on the metal work on the perimeter of it. And this beautiful metal work, very intricate design here. And there are actually a couple different sized dogs that would have fitted. You can see the triangles there. Do you want to pull it? You know, we didn't weigh it, but it's actually not that heavy. You would think it'd be really hefty, but yeah, it's, I don't know, Lauren, are you here? What do you want to guess? What do you think?
4 pounds, maybe.
Yeah, 3 or 4 pounds, yeah. So that's Lauren Kraut, our Senior Collections Manager and Registrar. She's the other half of the curatorial department and partner in crime in putting our exhibitions together here. So looking at this idea of, you know, really, you know, the elegance of this collar really starts to speak to the idea of how much these dogs and hounds are a part of, you know, this regal and loving and impressive presentations that we're looking to, and these furnishings becoming more and more elaborate. And on that idea, you know, the types of metals that are starting to be used, you know, metal being a prized commodity, and in the 18th century, we have some really lovely examples that are, you know, they're one-offs, they're not mass-produced in any way. And you have this, here, the one below, which is a pretty simple design there, but it has that lovely etching on the side of it. And then looking to this stamp work in this one, where you have a dog motif and flowers. And then this really impressive one on the top here, it's gilt metal with that lovely filigree work, and then looking at the bells that are hanging off of it. It's hanging backwards, so it would be opening this way. That's the hinge there. And then looking to sporting artists who are starting to paint the sporting culture that is arising in Britain at the time, right? So we're here, we have George Morland, who's a really well-regarded 18th century artist from the era, and he's painting spaniel types here. And then an early boarhound example above that, it's a Dutch school painting. And then looking to silver examples, so we see here we have a 19th century one on the top, late 18th century in the middle, late 18th, early 19th on the bottom. And they are all inscribed with owners' names. Dogs' names weren't often inscribed into collars at this time. It was usually the owner. And really the commodity is the collar. So in terms of a theft, if you steal a dog in this era, the dog would not be considered to be the crime. The collar would be the crime because the dog had no financial value. And so you'll find with these, you know, the one on the top is D. Ashurst at Waterstock. This one's sterling silver and has hallmarks on it. The one in the middle is William Crabb Codford, St. Peter's, 1767. And the one on the bottom is Charles Davis, and he was from Southborough. And you get this sense of, you know, you've got a toy breed, a medium-sized dog, right? So looking also at sort of the size dog that would have been wearing these different types of collars. So any thoughts, questions? Okay. So the next painting here is the Levee, 1849. It's George Henry Hall. He's really creating a conversation relating to a painting that Sir Edwin Landseer painted first. And it's shown here on the placard. It's called Sir Edwin Landseer's Hector, Nero, and Dash with the parrot, Leroy. It's in the Royal Collection. And so these were Charles II's, this particular painting, very refined interior, very, you know, regal, austere composition. And so here we have sort of the more approachable version of the kennel interior with the lovely dogs there, and very proud with the collar there, beautiful peacock in the background, and the different breeds.
Is this a Landseer painting, or is
so this is
the style?
Right. So this is by George Henry Hall. He was inspired by this very aristocratic regal composition to look to a kennel scene instead. So here again are two silver examples. Beautiful repoussé work on this collar. This is from 1822, so keeping in mind, right, so we're in the late 18th, early 19th century seeing these wonderful, really refined examples of collars being made and purchased and fostered. So repoussé work there, again, sterling silver for that one. The one above it is 1834. And that one also is inscribed, so that one says Miss C. and E. Senhauer from Netherhall, and this one has hallmarks as well. And then looking to other great examples in this case, so I mentioned not often were names on the collars of the dogs themselves. This one actually does have the dog's name on it. It's from 1827. It's inscribed W.M. Thomas, 1827, quote-unquote Monty, so that was Monty's collar. The one below it is an example of using contrasting metals. So we've got that copper interior flanged internal liner that's contrasted against the brass cutwork. And you'll notice there's a dog motif on the left and then the initial CM on the right on this one. So anyone here into Greek history? Do you recognize what this might be? You probably went through already. Did you look? So there's a pithos. They're in the market. We've got this mongrel type dog. So the pithos is a storage vessel in the Athenian market. It would have had oil or some other commodity in it that would have been sold at market there. But there's a dog in it, right? And he's kind of mongrelly looking. There's this lantern in the foreground. We've got this very affronted looking regal dog in the foreground here. These very guard-like looking bloodhounds in the background, and there's this lovely flirty dog here, right? So what is this all about? So the title of this is Alexander and Diogenes. So Diogenes was the first Cynic philosopher. So he was the one who really created the concept of cynicism. And he was quite theatrical, and he tended to pontificate in the Athenian square out in public a lot. And he famously would walk around in the middle of the day with a lantern and say, "I'm looking for an honest man," right? And so there is this recorded history of Alexander the Great and his entourage coming to seek an audience with Diogenes in the square. And so Diogenes at the time had taken up residence in a pithos. So he's literally like living in this vessel there as a statement, right, as part of his philosophical statement. And so we know that's him with his lantern here in the foreground. And Alexander the Great famously asked Diogenes, "Diogenes, what do you want?" And he answers, "Get out of my light." And that is what this is about. So it has the plaque that it is by Sir Edwin Landseer. It's actually a really lovely, really well done copy of the original that is being presented here for us for the conversation. The next casework shows the diversity of metals that were already available, that these were, and again, this is a prized commodity, so these are, highly refined decorative objects that are being created to be worn by a dog. And so the middle one is brass, the one on the bottom is copper. They are all inscribed, well, two of them are inscribed with names. The one on the top is pack tongue, and this was an Asian composite metal that was designed to made to look like silver. And so that one is inscribed Maria Woolley. And you'll notice that these have a straight finish on the bottom. And you can imagine this thin metal, even with a padding, might start to be uncomfortable for a dog over time. And so moving away from this rolled collar became the approach for the collars that's a little bit more comfortable for the dogs.
I have a question.
Yep.
So around what time did it become common to put the dog's name on? Was it around 1827?
It starts to increase by the end of the 19th century. Yeah, so it was like at this time, this was a pretty unusual to have in the 1820s, have a name of the dog on there.
Is this usually in the Museum of the Dog in New York?
So this one is actually from the American Kennel Club collection. The American Kennel Club is on a floor above the museum. So the museum is on the ground level. And so this is an example that would be in their headquarters offices that's on display there. The Museum of the Dog does take loans from their collection and show them in the museum as well. So there basically would have been two different places.
Well, now I'm curious what the lifespan
maybe that's why they didn't put names on. You know,
I don't think that, in terms of like the breed standards, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to speak to the biology of the.
For hunting and stuff like that,
Yep.
and of course they didn't have the veterinary
Right.
thing, so dogs
Yep.
probably maybe had a short shelf life,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Like humans, right? Same kind of idea. Then looking at the watercolors in the corner here, we've got a Henry Aachen at the top, the dog with a kennel in the background. And then this is an Edwin Landseer. This piece is called Blucher. It's an early one with him having painted it as a watercolor on paper. So a really great example. And then we've got Philip Reinagle here, bulldog in a barn with a bone. This was painted by 1803. And again, this idea of like, this is what a bulldog looked like then, thinking about what they look like now and how many changes they've gone through, right? Yep. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions about this gallery before we move on to go upstairs? Yes, ma'am.
I know some of the colors have locks.
Yes. So the locks are really, you can imagine, again, these as a jewelry and as expensive objects. The locks were really to, protect that collar and technically from theft off of the dog. But what would happen sometimes is that they would steal the dog to get the collar. And I chuckle ironically, but that's what the locks are for, is to keep them secured.
You said the dog had no value, but if they stole the collar, they would get in trouble for it.
Yes. So that would be a theft then. Yep. That was considered to be the theft, was the collar, not the dog.
So in some way, like the dog.
Yes.
Nice measure collar.
Yep. All right. Yes. There's the law for it. I'd have to look it up, but it's later, so later 19th century. But I don't have like the decade. Yep. I mean, the reality is, so we'll see upstairs that like pet ownership by the middle class is getting to the point by the end of the 19th, early 20th century to be able to cherish and have pets and also treat them with the same kind of luxury. The Industrial Revolution makes it a more mass-produced thing too for people to have collars. So we see that relationship broadening in scope. So I'm thinking just from a sort of educated guess point of view that by that era we're really going to see that being the reality.
Do you think it has anything to do with around the time when they started putting names on collars, that like the value in the dog and the personality of the dog became more?
I mean, certainly the idea that if you cherish your animal enough to put the name on the collar, that does again speak to that idea, and we see it happening more and more. So yes, I think it's a sort of both sides of the same conversation. Cool. All right. Okay. Is there anyone who would prefer to use the elevator? Are we all good to go upstairs? Okay, we're going to head upstairs.
Will we be coming back down here?
The exhibition actually ends on the second floor, but you're more than welcome. Once the tour is over, you're more than welcome to look through the rest of the museum as well.
Well, I
Yep.
just want to more carefully read some
Yep.
of the signs.
Great. Okay. Yes.
They wrote about dog collars and possibly had a collection of their own.
So Richard Hooper, and he actually wrote a lovely article about this exhibition that just came out in Middleburg Life's issue a couple of days ago.
Okay, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were very excited for him.
Did they collect as well, or?
I don't know
am I mistaken?
he had them, yes, but I don't know if it was a personal thing or if it was part of.
Okay. This is lovely.
Isn't this great?
I guess you don't have any sort of Landseer's Newfoundlands.
No. Yeah. We'll talk about it though.
Yeah.
We have it. So the Mod Earl, when we get to that, we'll talk about it. Yep. So hopefully this was a little bit exciting when you hit the second floor landing to kind of look through the space here. I mean, the magnitude of these two collections is really impressive, and we only have a portion of it in this exhibition. And so it was really a great opportunity and a wonderful experience to be able to design their artwork into our space. And we're excited that it'll be traveling to New York. I don't think I mentioned that yet. It's going to the Museum of the Dog in the spring, and then it'll travel to Thomasville, Georgia, to Pebble Hill Plantation next fall. So it'll be on the road for a while. So be able to see it in different venues along the way. So downstairs we organized loosely from the 17th century to mid-19th. Up here we're more looking at dog types loosely grouped together, so it's not necessarily chronological so much as the types of dogs that we have. So starting over here in the corner, we have this really great vignette of these 9 dog portraits here, and they're numbered. It's titled Champion Dogs of the 1860s, circa 1864. So why is the date so specific on this one? There are 3 where the actual dogs' names are legible. And so this relates to a specific dog show of May 27th through 31st, 1864. The second International Dog Show was when they were winners in that particular event. So looking to the idea of now we are solidly into a time period where we have dog breeders and owners looking to do shows and to present them on a regional, national sort of level. And we have these beautiful pair of Dalmatians here. So we have Champion Winholm's Market Rose on the left and Winholm's Roadster on the right, circa 1913. This is one of my favorite. I'm a huge fan of Percival Rousseau, personally. So this is an early one for him. This is 1906. Looking at the dog presented here has a name. Her name is Lita, and it's a really really great example of all the things that he's best known for. These beautiful portraits of dogs, here shown on point, right? And then looking at using this monochromatic technique to have the natural camouflage. So we, as viewers of this composition, discover that pheasant that the animal is pointing to as part of the way he approached painting it. Yep, exactly, right? So what is it pointing at? And Rousseau really focused on pointers and setters as his preferred composition as a sporting dog, and really understood the nature of this sport and these dogs that, natural tendencies that they had, which were encouraged by sportsmen over the centuries, so that they really, that they're driven to react this way in the setting as well. And so just that staunch point. If you've ever seen a dog like this, a setter or pointer on point, it's a really magnificent thing. It's just it's kind of
really catches the eye.
Yeah, absolutely, yep. That intensity, the intentness of it, right?
And the energy.
Mm-hmm.
The dog is definitely moving into the scene. And
Yep. And looking also from an artistic perspective, the vertical composition, the foreshortened perspective, these are all, things that we're looking to as innovative ideas in moving through into the 20th century.
I think I even see the moistness on its nose.
Yeah. And then looking to a 20th century example of a pointer here by John Donaldson. This is Champion. Not sure if it's Rapid or Rapide, because it has an E on the end, so we're not sure about that, but it's from 1980. And again, that just regal composition of this beautiful pointer doing what it does. He does, actually. E. And then we have a Welsh Springer Spaniel here, circa 1880. This is by Franklin Whiting Rogers. He's not a broadly known painter from this era, but in terms of sporting dog portraiture, he really did some beautiful compositions, and this is a great example of his work here. And this lovely collar that he has, and he has a nameplate there. We don't know what it says, but again, there's a nameplate. And then here we have an example by John Martin Tracy, really well-regarded sporting wing shooting and pointer and setter painter from this time period. And he's really, this is a magnificent example of his work and all the things he's known for, this lush tonalist approach, this dappled light and the shadow play and highlights of the sunlight in this wooded setting. And looking at the sitters for this is Bang Bang and Sensation. They're really strong bloodlines in the pointer breed from this era moving forward. And Sensation was the head study for the AKC logo. So it's kind of a cool connection there.
And what year was this?
This one is from about 1885. And so looking at the other side of the gallery here, we're moving into sight and scent hounds. And so, we looked at that beautiful portrait of Zilla downstairs from about 1835. This one's from 1990. And so, these are Salukis, and that concept of how much the breed standards have changed. But you still see a lot of the same sort of aspect of these animals in the portrait here as well. Just a beautifully painted scene. So good. The light, the impasto on this, the sort of that rich oil texture that he's painted here to capture the light playing off of the Saluki's coat. It's really beautifully done, and that the dry brush work to do the sky. It's just really elegant painting. Anyone guess what this is? It's in the sight and scent hound section. So greyhounds are, their sporting activity is coursing, so following rabbits usually would have been the default. So this is a quick release slip lead is the technical name for it. So the two collars would be on two sight hounds. And this is a release mechanism that has a cord that goes through the leather lead and comes out of the handle. And so when it was time to set the sight hounds on their way, pull the cord, this releases, and they're off with their leather collars. It's kind of cool. This is a fairly recent addition to the American Kennel Club Museum of the Dogs collection. This is a German artist by the name of Heinrich von Züger, head of the Hound. There's no date on it, but really beautifully painted composition. I really love this painting. I also love this dog. I have a tendency to gravitate towards really loyal and smart dogs, and that's what I see. Other people say he looks kind of scary. You think he's scary? I don't know. He looks inviting. He's pensive, yeah. And it really lovely treatment of the collar there, and the teal background and contrast with black. It's really great approach. This is one that when people know the AKC collection, this is sort of an iconic painting in their world. This is by George Earle. It's Warrior, circa 1870. You can see the name inscribed here. So again, we're looking at by 1870. Here we have a portrait. They're making a point for posterity on the frame to have the name of the dog here. And this is a Scottish deer hound. So looking at the dog in the 1870s, the hound in the 1870s, what it looked like, and really, looking to a painting done about a decade later, you can see the consistency of the breed at the time. They really, that's where they look physically. So we have a great one here by Charles Olivier Dupin. Hounds in the Snow, circa 1880. He's a sporting painter, French artist who really, this was his specialty. He usually painted verticals. He usually painted hounds in couples or some sort of coupled dog in the scene. It's sometimes two, sometimes a whole pack of them. And you really get the sense of this artist. And, the best painters of animals, they're painting them from the inside out, and especially if you're looking to painting a working or a sporting breed to make it authentic and believable, you really need to understand the way they behave and what they do when they're resting before a hunt or after a hunt, and to get that authentic composition. And he really had a wonderful way of doing that. You see the gamekeeper leaning on the fence post in the background there. And here is an example of a couple. So the ring on this one is missing. And then Dressed for the Occasion by Charles Haupt. He passed away last year after a really long, successful career as a watercolor and painter. So this is, yes, watercolor on paper. And this is an American foxhound, and he's got an early tracking collar on. This is a really wonderful thing in terms of keeping our animals safe, that we have these new technologies that a lot of hunts are starting to take advantage of in the States. If they have maybe if there's a road or if they're going over long distances, to be able to either track the foxhound, and sometimes they will do training collars on them as well if there's a road that they want to keep them away from. So it's a way to communicate and make sure you don't lose your dog. And then we've got Blanche here, 1969, American Kennel Club Museum of the Dog. She's just a cute, 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 cute basset hound there with her floppy ears, right? This selection of collars is looking to changes in, again, attitudes and design, right? So we start in the middle with this very spiky, outward pointing, flanged collar, right? So this is definitely protective, big, solid chunk of metal to cover the neck, and then those spikes that will cut you if you run your finger over them. And this one is inscribed William Eccles Island Hill, 1792, so an 18th century example. And then we move to the top left, we've got a 19th century one where these spikes are still pretty functional, but they have a blunted tip on them. And then looking to a later 19th century example where it's now becoming a decorative object, right? And so we have different iterations of that and looking at different designs where it's really an embellishment and not a functional thing anymore. It's a pet's collar instead of something that would be protecting the dog. So more utilitarian collars in here. So the one in the middle has beads, and the spikes turn inward for these. So these are training collars. And so the idea of these would be, this is to be able to communicate with the dog. Obviously, a dog owner is not going to want to make their dog bleed. So the different types of collars relate to different breeds, different hair lengths to be able to create communication. And so when you look at the one on the left, it looks like a medieval torture device, right? I mean, in looking at how big this collar is, right? So we've got an animal, probably a Mastiff type, that's like this big, right? So it has an interior metal mechanism, and there's a screw in the front here, and there's a plate that has 4 metal, what are essentially nail-like protrusions on it. And so this can be screwed to push those at varying distances through that metal plate, which is really a sense of control there. So you just let it poke through enough that you can get the training activity from the collar. Whether or not from a 21st century standard we think that this is kind or not, this is what this was designed to do. Someone had mentioned the grand paintings by Sir Edwin Landseer. I wish we had one of these, but this is, if we're going to have second place, I think we're okay with having Maud Earle's painting here in the exhibition. So she's painted this amazing St. Bernard in this snowy scene, hearkening to, just thinking about, them as rescue dogs in these extreme climates. But she's actually a show dog. Her name is Friendly Stephanie, which we love. We love when we walk by and we say, "Hi, Stephanie." But looking at this idea of the St. Bernard and the lure of the brandy and this barrel flask that we have here, there's no date on ours. The aesthetic of this really comes back to a vision that Edwin Landseer had about the lure of the rescue dogs that were in the St. Bernard Pass and other passes in these extreme Alpine terrains. And so we have a painting that he did here that is quite a bit later than the full-fledged use of these dogs as a rescue animal. And it's here we have these Alpine Mastiffs reanimating a distressed traveler. This one's in the National Gallery of Art. And they're shown as Mastiff types here. The early rescue dogs, they were Mastiff types, and they were bred in different fashions to this type that we think of as St. Bernard by the late 19th century. While there is no evidence that they used keg flasks, we do have written inclusions in our library collection. They're actually on display in the library cases. You might have seen them when we were doing the coffee, that they were usually sent out in pairs. One would have some sort of a flask or vial-like libation around their neck, and the other would be outfitted with a basket with bread or possibly with a blanket. And they were trained to go out alone. Sometimes the monks would go out with them. So you have literally generations of monks whose mission it was to help those who were in distress if they were encountered, got lost in the snow, became hypothermic, and to help them either get back to the hostel or set them on their way. And so the dogs would find them and try to encourage them to follow them back. If they were in too much distress to do that, one of them would have been possibly trained to go back and get a monk to return to help. They also, the St. Goddard's versions of them, they had trained them to give a particular call. So they had a bark, a very specific bark that they were trained to do to let the monks know they'd found somebody to help. So it's a really amazing sort of heritage that we're describing here, but it was very much lore and history by the time that we see these paintings being created. All right, we have this wonderful contemporary sculpture here by Susan Bahari, 1994. It has on the collar, it has the words "always faithful" on it. And so this is commemorating World War II military dogs. It's very regal. All right. So again, that idea of the pet versus, we think of the more ferocious aspects of it. So we have this juxtaposition here of the Charles Van Pon, French artist, circa 1910. And it has an inscription there on that wooden placard. I didn't study French. I'm really bad at pronunciation, but passez au large? Let's go with that. But it means in English, go wide. Stay away from this one. And then we have this other composition here with a French bulldog and a mastiff, and this is great, sweet, so different, right? So we've got, the protector and then the loving pet on the other side. So there's a really sweet little presentation of dog walks in this framed piece here from about the 1920s. So the Richard Ansdell painting that is the centerpiece of the galleries here was a really exciting opportunity to, you have sort of these moments where you see a painting and you're like, I just would love to have it right there. So there it is, right there. So Richard Ansdell, he created these conversation paintings. This one's 1865. So what's going on here? The title of this painting is The Poacher at Bay. So we've got the poacher here. And so we've got this mastiff that's obviously in mode, focused, right, on trying to stop something here, being very aggressive. So, and then we have this other dog over here, right? And we've got the dazed bag sort of on the lower perimeter here is beautifully painted still life. So what's going on? The mastiff is owned by the gamekeeper who is protecting private land. And so we've got the poacher who has encroached on private property and basically acquired a meal for himself with his dog. And the gamekeeper has trained this mastiff to track this man down and to stop him, right? And to keep him in a position to be able to call authority or follow through. So he's not actually pushing him away, he's pulling him away from his dog, right? And if you look at his fist, it's balled up. So it's probably, the idea of he's going to try and take the mastiff out. So conversation piece, really interesting conversation about, wherever you sit in the idea of private land, poaching, but that's what this composition was created to do, is to really bring that conversation to the forefront. It's just a magnificent painting, so striking and really powerful. And then again, that whole concept of juxtaposition, we have this beautiful painting of a mastiff who's a loved pet and just very noble looking and has a great collar. There's a 19th century portrait of a mastiff, again, really sweet composition with a really lovely collar in it. And then this one's kind of a quirky one that people have been really fascinated by. This is a steer and a mastiff pulling a cart, right? And there are two kids there, and you've got that Jack Russell looking on. So this would have been the type of collar that the mastiff would have worn to pull the cart. And this is a Scandinavian version for pulling sleds. So Okay. He has great examples of silver collars in the center case here. These two with the shields on them, they would have been for a bulldog. You can imagine that sort of barrel chest with that lovely embellishment right there at the neck. And then looking at the different sizes of dogs that were wearing these collars, you know, up in these really large grand ones and down to a smaller breed. And this really chunky silver one, really impressive here. And so we look to this section here, looking to pets. We have a beautiful watercolor of Lady Flora Hastings with her Mastiff, Pony, and Poodle. This is done by 1887. And she is in a side saddle riding attire. The particular outfit that she has on, the offside view of the saddle, gives us indication, the time period also, that she was a really highly trained dressage rider, probably also would have been able to fox hunt. And this is the saddle in particular is the design of it really speaks to the time period, because a little bit of an aside, it's just fascinating. We all love the side saddle conversation here and we talk about it. But so if you can imagine, the first version of the side saddle was a U. And so the lady would have her thigh in the one leg in this U and the other one wrapped around the upward facing pommel. And elite riders in the late 18th and early 19th century, they were jumping and galloping in this saddle. And so we see in these riding manuals that were written at the time, there was a real, like the communication between the lady and the horse was key, and the relationship that they had with one another, because it was really a balancing act, right? And so it's all motion, understanding the motion. And then looking at the idea that they had a slipper stirrup under that skirt. And it literally is a metal slipper look. It's a flat plate. It's got a cup. You put your foot in it. And that's under these really voluminous skirts. And in the most extreme iterations, these skirts were literally feet long, like they were dragging on the ground. So you can imagine if a lady fell, right, and the horse went, right, broke away, it was really dangerous. So it was a really high mortality rate. So we see a lot of safety things starting to develop as women are riding more and more and enjoying the sport. So there's the really iconic development of what was called the Leapinghorn circa 1835. And so it's a pommel that is now curved the other way. So if you know what a modern side saddle looks like, there are only two pommels left now. And so we had the earliest versions, they had the U, and they added that Leapinghorn, right? And so over time, ladies, so it was supposed to be like a brake, a safety mechanism. So women were encouraged to continue to have that ride the same way, and then the Leapinghorn was there in case they needed it, and then they could brace up and into it to keep themselves in their seat firmly. But over time, the riding style started to focus on that upward pommel and the other one, and so that outside pommel became basically unnecessary. And so we see these designs over that 50-year time period where that offside pommel gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it basically now, as we know it today, is gone, and it's just a flat, maybe a little bit of a curve just to go on the outside. So I know that was it's one of those things. I just love the painting because it's very specific to the time period. But, all right. We had one. It was called, Side Saddle, 1690 to 1935. So, okay, ugly? Yeah? Kind of cute?
Not my taste.
Adorable? So this is a breed that is called the Affenpinscher, Affenpincher, and it means monkey dog, which I think is hilarious. So, there's so much about this. I mean, it's a silly looking dog, but when you think about the idea of this really sweet, cherished pet on this beautiful green velvet pillow with this really refined, finished leather collar and lock, it really speaks to the, and having a portrait made of this dog, this particular dog owner really loved this dog, right? Pug and Terrier, 1875. This is by John Sargent Noble. So conversation piece again. What are we looking at, right? We've got this pug who's very, very fat and happy, right? And he's on his house step looking at this very sad-looking dog that's begging, right? And he's on a rope lead, and he's got a cup that's tied to his collar. And so, in this era, the dogs were used for panhandling, and then even more formal approaches where maybe the Red Cross or some other bigger organizations would have them at the train stations, and they would have like possibly a blanket, and then a formal ask for change. And so, the sort of class conversation is presented too. And here we have orphans. 1893, William Frank Calderon, American Kennel Club. Wonderfully painted, really a really lovely artist in the approach to it, just the way the dogs are painted, the carpet, but the title makes it a little bit sad, right? And you got the orphans and you got the other one taking care of them. This case features some really refined examples of these collars. So as we're talking about, with the Industrial Revolution and this focus on having these elaborate furnishings for dogs, we see some really beautiful examples from this time period. So the one on the top left is French. It's around 19th century. It's got this green leather and then these beautiful metal fittings on it. They're like acorn bells and little flowers on there. And then the one in the middle is English sterling silver, and it has Moroccan leather that's been designed to go through a slit to create the pattern there. And then the one on the right is Italian, circa 1940. That really refined presentation with this lovely leather and the design work there. Possibly it's going to be something like a Gucci. We haven't been able to establish a specific record of it, but it's a really beautifully and well done collar. And then the one on the left in the middle is by Tiffany and Company. So American sterling silver, and it has a New York dog tag on it, which is kind of cool. And then we have a brass one with bells on it, another silver one with bells on it. And then the one on the bottom left is made of leather. It has turquoise embellishments around it. So semi-precious jewels is an accent on this particular collar. And then it has a play on a poem. It's inscribed on that plaque, "I'm H.O. Swinford's dog. Whose dog are you?" So kind of cute. Then we have a seed bead collar, so with contrasting beads with turquoise and gold. And the letters Gypsy are created with that pattern. And we have a Swiss collar there in the corner. And then looking here, we have the Dandy Dinmonts, particular breed with this really bright red eyes. Anyone here? Okay, so if we do the cute, not cute thing, are they cute? You think so? Okay. I think the red eyes are really scary. So, we've been thinking about Halloween posts for this one. But you see this really lovely presentation of the couple there and the two colors that were breed standards for the Dandy Dinmont. One above, It's a Small World, 1930. Again, looking at new perspectives and views in artistic composition, where we're now at eye level with the dog experiencing walking through. You would look like you.
Well, I know this is that when after the camera would have been introduced, I know that changed art and composition, so I'm wondering if that the innovation of using camera would have affected composition. That's an unusual composition, which makes it interesting.
Absolutely. Certainly like the idea of being able to get down on the ground and take pictures of things, just like, all of the motion studies that Muybridge did, right? They also, like, just from a psychological perspective, human beings who couldn't imagine that before, it becomes part of our normal narrative visually and looking through the world. So the thing too is, like, we have an era in art where artists are looking to do new and different things, and they're looking to break the rules and make names for themselves, right? So the idea of getting down at eye level and thinking about what the world looks like where the dog is, it's a really neat conversation there. So here we have two fox terriers sport working, right? They're chasing this rabbit. So the title gives us a little bit of a hint to how this ends. It's called Mist. So the rabbit is able to get back to his rabbit hole. Another great selection of collars in here. We've got the leather one up top with these beautifully added accents of sterling silver, and they have a beautiful pattern on them. Here we have one with a bulldog and a bull on it. The one in the corner with the spikes there. This one has the dog's name. He's Buddy. And then we have some regionalist designs. So, you know, southern here with the turquoise and flower kind of presentation there. And the one on the right is inscribed. This one is inscribed. This is from Providence, Rhode Island, and it has J.P. Millard, license number 708 on it. So looking to the idea of tracking and being able to get your dog back as well. So, any questions, thoughts?
I see one of the collars, which is stamped so tiny. I can't figure if it's a sterling stamp or if much of the silver is the German silver.
So which one are you referring to?
Right here.
Is Lauren? I think Lauren actually got it.
They were right
Yep.
on this end.
Yeah, I haven't actually looked at this one under a loop. I think this is one that we couldn't make it out. It has markings on it, but we don't know what they say on these particular two. But take a look in a magnifying glass at some point. Maybe we can figure it out. All right. Well, I really appreciate you all joining us this morning for Coffee with the Curator. Again, you know, if you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to grab me. I'll be here today. We welcome you to look through the rest of the museum, have a look through the exhibition a little bit more. We do have an exhibition catalog that we produced for this. It's available at the front desk. We have a workshop on recreating the gypsy collar. That is the date scheduled for that yet? March 25th. So look to sign up for that. It is a hands-on and intensive arts and crafts kind of approach to it to recreate it. So it'll be low numbers, but a really great opportunity to learn how to do seed bead stitching and to recreate that item. And then, am I missing any other programs? That's it for now, right? All right. Well, thank you everyone who joined us virtually. If you have any questions or thoughts about what we've talked about this morning, please feel free to drop questions in the chat, and we will make sure to follow up on that for y'all who are watching online. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.